Good evening. I'm John Flannery, and the reason I'm doing a stand-in talk is because it rained here today. It was beautiful, the spring weather, but I couldn't get a chance to talk. And if I had talked, then I probably would have missed the news that came out late in the day, which is the Supreme Court, and I'm going to characterize it as it is, the way I perceive it. The Supreme Court has fallen into alliance with Trump. It has decided to delay as much as it can get away with pretending to be a court that proceeds deliberately and without bias, when in fact and truth, they are trying to help Trump win this election. It's not the first time that the Supreme Court, under different management, if you will, did this. We're talking about Bush against Gore. And we're on notice that the Supreme Court justices who swore that they would follow precedent certainly didn't in the case of Roe v. Wade. We have the data points, and we also know about the conflicts and interest of both. Certainly the leading ones are Thomas and Alito, associate justices. And Thomas should not even be participating in these deliberations, given the participation by his wife at the highest levels of attacking the United States and trying to overthrow our government so that Trump would be chosen as the president, though he lost the election under claims of fraud that themselves were not true, and thus unseated the actually democratically elected president, Joe Biden. So, what am I saying about the court? Because you probably heard some commentators say things like, well, yeah, it's April 22nd. They're going to have an argument, and that's late, and it's delayed, and I'm upset about it. But, they still have time to reach a decision, and they presume a certain decision, and I'll talk about that in a second. They'll reach a certain decision, and then a trial can be held, although the Supreme Court doesn't say any of those things. Commentators say it. Now, why do they say it? They're not trying to mislead us. Lawyers think the courts are not political. Now, of the courts and being political, the Supreme Court has been involved historically in so many difficult issues that put parts of America against each other and involved all sorts of untoward acts. You wonder about some of these things. How would Dred Scott be discovered today? We have history behind us now. It's easy to say, nobody should be property. But what would we decide? Now, since the beginning of this republic, the Federalists have believed a monarchy was superior to a democracy. And in fact, in many ways, all sorts of people to run our government at the beginning were selected in ways that were not democratic. And, women had no vote, and persons of color had no vote, and slaves, quote, did get the vote after a civil war, and women still didn't get the right to be recognized to vote until the 1920s, after they agreed to support temperance provisions in the Congress. Okay, so what's at hand? What's at hand is the issue before the court is, does a president have immunity as a president or a former president to shoot an opponent with impunity so that you can't prosecute him? Now, Trump's people argue, yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead, you can do that. Now, that's not anything in our history, nor any Judeo-Christian values or any other belief or unbelief that exists that says that's permissible conduct. But these guys, Trump and his corrupt minion, they're fine with that. So we have experts on the air saying, well, yeah, it would be better if it was sooner, but April 22nd, and we can still hold the trial. But that's not what the court wants. And you can't ignore the data points of this court and give them a bye, particularly after the intermediate court, the U.S. Circuit Court for the District of Columbia, went at this and wrote a huge opinion that in every jot and tittle is correct. And before the Supreme Court, what do I suppose they should have done? Well, A, they should have decided it sooner and had an oral argument already and maybe written an opinion by now. They didn't do that. They could have done that. They could have just said, well, we're not going to take the case. We're not going to grant the request to be considered. But they didn't do that because they would lose control. They want control over the argument. And so why are we at this deadline? You got to wonder what the hell Garland was doing the first couple of years he was in office. He was not our Attorney General. I don't know what he was. I don't know that it would have been worse if he was on the court, if he had actually gotten that position that he was named for under Obama. So Garland is responsible, going back to the first several years in which there was no effort to make an accounting for what happened when Trump and his people tried to overrun the Capitol. No congressman has been investigated. No senator has been investigated. The prosecution that is the core here is only against Trump. And for efficiency, I don't have any problem with that. And a lot of people are identified in that. And I think that was a positive. Also, Georgia, a state case, has stated it. But what we're involved in is an effort by Trump and company to, well, at one point I said, throw sand in the mimeograph. You know, throw a wrench into the operations of government. And because we have become so distant and sort of played it by improvisation with the laws, when the Constitution tells us what we could do and we haven't done it, we find ourselves in a place of floating. And so we don't have a law. Their efforts to break down our democracy and our republic is working. People are by threats and force supporting Trump. And this follows a playbook of past dictators. Rallies. The weak underbelly of the system allows you to get involved. You can almost hear Bannon talking about it this way. And then when you're there, you can gradually take over the government. You keep organizing. An organized minority beats a disorganized majority. And boy, if we don't have a disorganized majority on the Hill. I was impressed the other day. I know this may sound off in left field. Arnold Schwarzenegger was asked on one of these talk shows, so do you have any autographs by anybody? And he seemed not to remember if he ever had. He said no. And then he was shown a picture of him with Gorbachev. And he came alive. And he said, imagine, this is a man who spent his life in the Soviet system, step by step up the ladder all the way, and he gets in charge. And what does he do? He decides it's wrong, and he dismantles it. That was courage. And Arnold, who was the governor of California, which he says in a different way, Arnold said that we have too many cowards in America. They would never do that. And those are the people we need right now. And when we, in our pride and vanity, say, why didn't they just toss off these people? Well, they didn't take them seriously. They didn't understand the signs. They were, like some people today, with goodwill, saying, well, Supreme Court can never do anything. They must have legitimate reasons for this. Well, they don't. Their legitimate reason is the same as Bush against Gore. It is to win an election. In that case, they did it quickly. In this case, they do it slowly. And the next question is, what do we do about it? The answer is we have to talk about it and demand that those people that cover these events get the facts straight and tell us the data points by which the Supreme Court has lost its way and is itself corrupt and has political hacks on there that got there by promising Trump they would do what he wanted, and they're doing what he wants because they also want to do it, because they're part of the Federalists that since 1787, when the U.S. Constitution was written, they have believed a monarchy is superior to a republic or democracy. That's our challenge. Also, as a matter of fact and detail and logistics, the Republicans can't, in a fair election, win because their policies are geared to their elite. It is not a system in which no man is above the law. It's a system in which there actually is a caste system. And it may only have a couple of rungs, but I can tell you who's on it. One of them is Trump. And others are on that Supreme Court. And these people get something that nobody else in America gets. They get special consideration. Now, if it turned out just by paying attention this court had done the right thing and hadn't issued this delay today, then I might think better of them. But I have been saying for, I don't know, weeks and months that the test of the Supreme Court and whether it can be trusted or not is how it handles this appeal involving immunity, in which some people think that a former president can shoot and kill someone, and because he was president, he can't be prosecuted. Nonsense. But these guys surrounding Trump, they believe it. Bannon believes it. All these people believe it. And when we look at the Supreme Court and we scratch our heads, we say, why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that because they want to elect Trump. And if we don't react against it, they will succeed in avoiding the prosecutions, which cannot be a rightful objective of the Supreme Court. So what do we have to do? We have to talk about it. We have to insist the hosts of shows and the guests and the experts dig deeper and say, what about the fact that these guys are bought and paid for? What about the fact that Thomas, Associate Justice Thomas, shouldn't even be sitting on this case, given his wife's activity, and I assume his? So senators might mention impeaching people. Maybe they should talk about impeaching Associate Justice Thomas. Will they succeed? Will it happen? They have the facts, unlike the Republican investigation of President Biden. We should ask Sleepy in the U.S. Attorney, in the Attorney General's office, to investigate what's going on in the Supreme Court. Will they do it? No, I don't think so. And if we don't do any of these things, we will lose, and we will lose the opportunity to make a difference. And we have enough time to make a difference, despite the fact that Garland's been asleep at the switch, seemingly on purpose, because it's so steadfast that he did nothing. He must have decided not to do something, with or without a wink from the President Biden, which was bad judgment if that's how it happened. So what do we have to do? We have to see that every day between now and the election is not lost, and that we are fighting for our freedom, because that's what's at stake. Women's freedom, right to be let alone, our right to travel where we want, our right to say what we have to say, our right to vote for whom we think should be our elected representative. And we can't have false elections like they have in banana republics. And we can't have somebody taking advantage of the weak underbelly of a pure democracy in order to derange it and make it suit them on their path to being the president. And Trump, he's not going to have to burn down any public buildings the way one dictator did. Our Congress is not the Reichstag, but it may be worse, because we're going to give less of a fight than happened in Germany. So I had to get that off my chest. I hope it helps you if you're thinking about it. Obviously, you don't have to agree with me, but I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. And people can be wrong when they believe it. But, you know, I spent a little time on this planet, especially focusing on corruption, and as a prosecutor and on legislation on the Hill, and I clerked and stuff like that. I've represented a lot of clients over the years. Ironically, most of them have been Republicans. And so I have a basis for my opinion. And if you'll notice, I think some of the key commentators, people I really respect, you'll hear them say, I can't understand it. Why are they doing it? And they're smart enough, they know it. They don't want to say it because they so believe in the court system. But the court system is another political organ, and it's become so distorted by the people who are now on the court. And I think of members of the court who used to go around and encourage people to trust the court and give them reason to do so. And that's not working with this court, because you can't trust this court. You can't trust the judges who said under oath that they were going to follow precedent and haven't. And you can't trust them to do the right thing if they actually get to the merits of the question whether a president can go shoot something or not. So thanks for listening to me. I look forward to whatever comments you have. And perhaps it'll be beautiful tomorrow. And I'll talk to you from walking in the Cathedral of Trees. All the best. Good evening. Bye-bye.